Marcus Kane had been exiled from the Terran Defense Corps for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that he was counting. The court-martial had stripped him of his rank, his honor, and his home, all because he refused to follow orders that would have killed innocent civilians on Proxima Station. His commanding officer called it insubordination. Marcus called it having a conscience. Now he drifted through the Outer Rim territories in a battered cargo hauler, taking odd jobs and keeping his head down. The ship's navigation system flickered as he approached the Drakmor system, a collection of wild planets that most civilized species avoided. Perfect for someone like him. The distress beacon appeared on his scanner like a dying star. 3 short bursts, followed by 2 long ones, then silence. Marcus recognized the pattern immediately. It was an old Terran code, one that predated the modern fleet by decades. Someone was in serious trouble. Against his better judgment, Marcus changed course toward the signal's origin. The beacon led him to Drakmor Prime, a world of crystalline mountains and vast forests that sparkled under twin suns. As his ship broke through the atmosphere, he saw the source of the distress call. A massive shape lay crashed in a clearing surrounded by towering blue trees. At first glance, it looked like a ship, but as Marcus flew closer, he realized his mistake. It was a dragon, an actual living dragon, easily 300 feet from nose to tail, with scales that shimmered between deep purple and midnight black. The creature was clearly wounded. One of its great wings bent at an unnatural angle, and dark blood pooled beneath its body. But what made Marcus land his ship wasn't the dragon itself. It was what surrounded it, a nest. The dragon had built a massive nest from woven branches and precious stones, and inside that nest were eggs. 7 of them, each one the size of a small vehicle, glowing with soft inner light. The dragon had positioned itself between the nest and a group of approaching shapes on the horizon. Through his ship's view screen, Marcus could see them clearly now. Vorthak raiders, at least 50 of them, moving in their characteristic formation. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as egg hunters, creatures that fed on the unborn young of other species. They wore metal armor that clicked when they moved, and their 4 arms each carried a different weapon. The dragon tried to rise as the raiders approached, but its injured wing failed it. It crashed back down with a sound like thunder, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it spread its good wing wide and opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth like silver swords. A warning roar echoed across the forest, so powerful that Marcus felt it vibrate through his ship's hull. Marcus sat in his pilot's seat, hands hovering over the controls. This wasn't his fight. He was exiled, forgotten, just trying to survive in a galaxy that had rejected him. The smart thing would be to leave now, before the Vorthak noticed his ship. But then he looked at the dragon again. Despite its wounds, despite being outnumbered, it wasn't backing down. It was prepared to die protecting its eggs. There was something noble in that determination. Something that reminded Marcus why he had joined the Defense Corps in the first place. The lead Vorthak raised a plasma cannon, aiming it directly at the dragon's head. That's when Marcus made his decision. His cargo hauler wasn't built for combat, but it had a few surprises left over from his military days. Marcus activated the ship's emergency thrusters and dove toward the raiders. The first blast from his modified pulse cannons caught them completely off guard, turning 3 Vorthak into smoking craters. The dragon's massive head turned toward Marcus's ship, and for a moment, their eyes met through the view screen. The creature's gaze was ancient and intelligent, filled with pain, but also with something that might have been gratitude. Marcus pulled his ship up just in time to avoid a volley of return fire from the Vorthak. His communication system crackled to life with angry chittering in the raider's language, which his translator rendered as various creative threats against his life and family lineage. "Sorry to disappoint you," Marcus muttered, bringing his ship around for another pass. But I'm already in exile. You can't hurt me any worse than I've hurt myself." The dragon used the distraction to strike. Despite its injuries, it managed to catch 2 raiders in its massive jaws, crunching through their armor like it was made of paper. Its tail swept across the ground, sending 5 more Vorthak flying into the crystal trees with bone-breaking force. But there were still too many of them. Marcus's ship took a direct hit to the port engine, and he fought to keep it airborne as warning lights flashed across his control panel. The Vorthak were regrouping, spreading out in a wider circle around the dragon and its nest. Through his scanner, Marcus could see more shapes on the horizon. Reinforcements. The raiders had called for backup, and soon there would be over 100 of them. Even if the dragon was uninjured, it couldn't fight that many. Marcus set his ship down hard about 50 meters from the nest, wincing as the damaged engine finally gave out completely. He grabbed his rifle and what ammunition he could carry, then sealed his ship behind him. If he was going to die here, at least it would be for something that mattered. The dragon watched him approach with eyes like molten gold. It was breathing heavily, and Marcus could see that it was losing blood fast. When he got close enough, the creature lowered its great head until it was level with him. "I'm here to help," Marcus said, knowing the dragon probably couldn't understand him, but hoping his tone would convey his intent. To his surprise, the dragon spoke. Its voice was like distant thunder, speaking in accented but clear Terran standard. "Human warrior," the dragon rumbled, "why do you risk yourself for eggs not of your kind?" Marcus checked his rifle's power cell and took position behind one of the nest's woven walls. "Because someone has to, and because I've got nothing left to lose anyway." The dragon's golden eyes studied him for a long moment. "I am called Astareth the Distant. I have flown between stars for 1,000 of your years, and I have seen much of your kind. Most humans fear us or seek to hunt us for our scales. You are different." "Marcus Kane," he replied, spotting movement in the tree line. "Former lieutenant in the Terran Defense Corps, and right now I'm the only thing standing between your kids and those raiders." Astareth made a sound that might have been laughter, though it sounded more like a small earthquake. "Then let us stand together, Marcus Kane of the Defense Corps. Let us show these scavengers what it means to face dragonfire and human stubbornness." The first wave of Vorthak burst from the forest with weapons blazing. Marcus opened fire, his military training taking over as he laid down covering fire for the wounded dragon. Astareth reared back and unleashed a stream of white-hot flame that turned the nearest raiders to ash in seconds. But Marcus could see the truth in the dragon's movements. Each breath of fire was weaker than the last, and the creature's responses were getting slower. The wound in its side was spreading, dark blood staining the ground beneath them. "You need medical attention," Marcus shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "I need my children to survive," Astareth replied, sweeping another group of raiders aside with its tail. "That is all that matters now." Marcus reloaded his rifle and tried not to think about how many rounds he had left. The Vorthak were learning, staying back and using ranged weapons instead of charging into the dragon's reach. Soon, they would overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. That's when Marcus noticed something strange about the eggs. They weren't just glowing anymore. They were pulsing, like heartbeats, and the light was getting brighter with each pulse. "Astareth," he called. "Are your eggs supposed to be doing that?" The dragon's head snapped toward the nest, and its golden eyes widened in what looked like surprise mixed with hope. "Impossible," it breathed. "They should not hatch for another decade at least. Unless—" The largest egg began to crack. The crack spread across the largest egg like lightning made visible, accompanied by a sound like breaking crystal. From inside came a tapping, rhythmic and insistent. Then another egg began to crack, and another, until all 7 were splitting open with sounds that echoed across the battlefield. The Vorthak raiders paused their advance, chittering nervously among themselves. Their translator boxes crackled with phrases like bad omen and retreat now. But their leader, a massive Vorthak with scars covering 3 of his 4 arms, snarled something that made them hold their positions. Marcus kept his rifle trained on the tree line while stealing glances at the hatching eggs. The first crack had spread completely around its shell, and now something was pushing from within. A small, clawed foot appeared, no bigger than his hand, followed by a snout that sparkled with tiny silver scales. Dragon young can sense their parents' distress, Astareth explained, her voice growing weaker. When we are dying, they sometimes hatch early to help defend the nest, but they are so small, so vulnerable. They should stay safe in their shells for years more. The first hatchling broke free completely, no larger than a house cat but perfect in every detail. Its scales shifted from silver to deep blue as it moved, and its eyes were the same molten gold as its parents. It looked around the nest with curiosity until it spotted the approaching raiders, then let out a tiny roar that somehow carried more menace than its size should have allowed. 6 more eggs cracked open in rapid succession. Each hatchling was unique, with scales of different colors that seemed to shift in the light. One was emerald green with hints of copper, another was deep red with veins of gold. They were beautiful and alien and completely helpless against 50 armed raiders. "This is why you fought so hard," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "They're not just your eggs. They're the future of your entire species." Astareth nodded slowly. Dragons mate rarely and lay eggs even more rarely. These 7 represent the first dragon young born in this sector for 3 centuries. If they die here, an entire bloodline ends with them. Marcus looked at the tiny dragons, then at the advancing Vorthak, then at his rifle's ammunition counter. 12 shots left. Even if every shot was perfect, he couldn't stop them all. That's when the smallest hatchling, one with scales like polished obsidian, waddled over to him on unsteady legs. It looked up at Marcus with those ancient golden eyes and made a sound like a questioning chirp. "I think she likes you," Astareth said, and for the first time since he'd met her, the dragon sounded amused despite her pain. Marcus knelt down and carefully extended his hand. The hatchling sniffed his fingers, then gently rubbed her head against his palm. Her scales were warm, like metal that had been sitting in sunlight. "What's her name?" Marcus asked. Dragons choose their own names when they are old enough to speak. Until then, they are simply called by the order of their hatching. She is 7th born. The Vorthak leader let out a harsh bark, and his forces resumed their advance. They moved more cautiously now, forming a wide circle around the nest. Marcus counted them quickly. 43 left, and more coming through the forest. "Astareth," Marcus said, "I need you to do something for me." "Speak, human warrior. When I give the signal, I want you to grab as many of your children as you can and fly away. Don't argue. I know you're wounded, but you might be able to make it to cover with some of them." The dragon's golden eyes flashed. "I will not abandon my young. I will not abandon you." "You're not abandoning anyone," Marcus said firmly. "You're saving who you can. That's what parents do. They make the hard choices so their children can live." Marcus stood and checked his rifle one more time. 12 shots to buy a dragon mother and her babies enough time to escape. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. That's when 7th born did something unexpected. She climbed up Marcus's leg like a cat scaling a tree, using her tiny claws to grip his clothing without tearing it. In seconds, she was perched on his shoulder, her warm weight somehow comforting despite the desperate situation. "She has never seen a human before," Astareth said softly, "but she trusts you completely. Dragons have excellent instincts about character." The first Vorthak raider reached effective range and raised his plasma rifle. Marcus put him down with a clean shot to the center mass, then immediately shifted targets to the next closest. 11 shots remaining. The raiders spread out further, making themselves harder targets. Smart. Marcus had hoped for at least 20 kills. But these weren't mindless beasts. They were experienced hunters who had done this before. Astoreth breathed fire again, but the flame barely reached 10 meters before guttering out. She was dying, and they all knew it. The dragon tried to gather her hatchlings with her good wing, preparing to shield them with her body when the raiders closed in. But the little dragons had other ideas. As the Vorthak advanced, all 7 hatchlings moved to the front of the nest, forming a line between their mother and the attackers. Their tiny mouths opened, and they tried to breathe fire like their parent. What came out wasn't much more than warm smoke and tiny sparks, but they stood their ground anyway. 7 tiny dragons, barely an hour old, trying to protect their dying mother with courage that made Marcus's heart ache. That's when something inside Marcus snapped. Not broke, but snapped into focus like a weapon being loaded. "No," he said quietly. "Not today. Not like this." He activated his rifle's emergency overcharge, a feature that would triple its power output for exactly 6 shots before burning out the weapon permanently. The safety protocols screamed warnings at him, but Marcus ignored them all. His first overcharged shot punched through a Vorthak raider and the tree behind him. The second took out 3 raiders who had been foolish enough to bunch up. The third and fourth shots cleared the entire left flank of attackers. 2 shots left, and at least 20 raiders still advancing. Marcus slung the rifle across his back and drew his sidearm, a heavy pistol that had been with him since his academy days. Seventh Born chirped encouragement from his shoulder as he took aim. "Astoreth," he called without taking his eyes off the approaching enemy. "What do dragons believe happens to warriors who die protecting their young?" The dragon's voice was barely a whisper now. "We believe they become part of the wind that lifts our wings. We believe they join the fire that burns in our hearts. We believe they are never truly gone." Marcus smiled as he squeezed the trigger. "Then I'll see you in the sky, my friend." But before he could fire, the forest exploded with new sounds. Engines, lots of them, approaching fast. The Vorthak raiders looked up in confusion as 3 ships burst through the tree canopy, weapons already blazing. The lead ship was a sleek Terran fighter that Marcus recognized immediately. It was Captain Sarah Chen, his former wingmate, followed by 2 more Defense Corps vessels. Their targeting computers had perfect locks on every Vorthak position. The battle was over in 30 seconds. When the smoke cleared, no raiders remained alive. Captain Chen's ship landed near the nest, and she climbed out wearing full combat gear. She approached Marcus slowly, her hands visible and empty. "Hello, Marcus," she said. "We got your emergency beacon." Marcus looked confused. "I never sent a beacon." Chen pointed to his shoulder, where Seventh Born was perched. The little dragon's scales were now pulsing with soft light in a complex pattern. "Dragons are telepathic," Chen explained. "Your little friend here broadcast your location and situation to every ship within 50 light years, along with something else." "What else?" Chen smiled. "The story of a banished human warrior who chose to die protecting dragon young. The entire sector heard it, Marcus. By tomorrow, every species in known space will know what you did here." Astoreth lifted her great head with effort. The child spoke truly. Human warrior. Dragons remember kindness. We remember sacrifice, and we never forget our debts. 3 months after the battle at Drakmor Prime, Marcus Kane stood in the center of the Galactic Council chambers, still trying to process how his life had changed. The same government that had exiled him now wanted to give him their highest honor. The irony wasn't lost on him. Captain Chen had been right. The story of the human who fought alongside a dying dragon to protect her young had spread through the galaxy faster than any news broadcast or official announcement. But it hadn't been told by humans. It had been told by the dragons themselves. Dragons, it turned out, were far more numerous than most species realized. They simply preferred to remain hidden, living in the empty spaces between stars or on worlds that others considered uninhabitable. When Astoreth's children had broadcasted Marcus's story, every dragon in the sector had heard it, and dragons, as Astoreth had said, never forgot. The first sign had been the gifts. Strange packages began arriving at every human embassy and outpost, rare metals that dragons had mined from asteroid cores, gemstones that sparkled with inner fire. Ancient artifacts from civilizations that had vanished before humans left Earth, all accompanied by simple messages, for the kindness shown to Astoreth's children. Then came the offers. Dragons began approaching human traders and diplomats, offering technology and knowledge that they had never shared with any other species. Faster-than-light communication methods, ship hulls that could withstand the crushing depths of gas giants, medical techniques that could extend human lifespan by centuries. The other species in the galaxy had taken notice. Some were impressed by humanity's apparent nobility. Others were suspicious or jealous of the special relationship with the dragons. A few, like the Vorthak Confederacy, were openly hostile, but most importantly, the story had changed how humans saw themselves. Marcus had become a symbol, proof that humans could be more than just clever apes with advanced weapons. They could be noble, they could be selfless, they could earn the respect of beings that had lived since before Earth's sun was born. The council president, a tall Centaurian with silver skin and 3 eyes, cleared her throat to address the assembly. We are here today to formally recognize the actions of former Lieutenant Marcus Kane, whose bravery at Drakmor Prime has fundamentally altered interspecies relations throughout the sector. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his dress uniform. They had given him back his rank and his honors, but it still felt strange to wear the blue and silver of the Defense Corps after so long in exile. However, the president continued, we are not here simply to honor one human. We are here because the dragons themselves have requested an audience with this council. For the first time in recorded history, a dragon delegation wishes to address the Galactic Assembly. The chamber doors opened with a sound like thunder, and Astoreth entered. Marcus had visited her several times during her recovery, but seeing her here, in the heart of galactic government, was breathtaking. She had regained her full strength and more. Her scales gleamed like polished metal, and her golden eyes held the wisdom of ages. She moved with liquid grace despite her massive size, careful not to damage the chamber that had been hastily reinforced for her visit. But she wasn't alone. Following behind her came all 7 of her children, now the size of large dogs and growing fast. Seventh-born spotted Marcus immediately and gave a happy trill, though she remained in formation with her siblings. "Honored delegates," Astoreth said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "I am Astoreth the Distant, speaker for the dragon clans of the Outer Rim. I come before you to discuss the future of dragon-human relations." The president leaned forward. "We are honored by your presence, Speaker Astoreth. How may the council serve you?" "It is not what you may do for us," Astoreth replied, "but what we may do for each other. For too long, my people have remained apart from galactic society. We have watched from the shadows as younger species struggled with problems we solved millennia ago. We have remained neutral as wars ravaged populated worlds. We have been selfish." She turned her great head toward Marcus. "But one of your kind showed us that honor and courage exist beyond species lines. Marcus Kane risked everything to protect children that were not his own, of a race he had never met, for no reward save the knowledge that it was right. His actions have reminded my people of what we once were and could be again." The chamber fell silent. Dragons hadn't involved themselves in galactic politics for over 10,000 years. Their neutrality was so absolute that most species had stopped trying to contact them entirely. Therefore, Astareth continued, the dragon clans formally announce our intention to join the Galactic Council as active participants. We offer our knowledge, our technology, and our protection to any species willing to prove themselves worthy through deed rather than just word. The implications sent ripples of excited conversation through the assembly. Dragon technology was legendary. Their ships could travel between galaxies, their weapons could crack moons, their knowledge spanned millions of years of galactic history. Furthermore, Astareth said, raising her voice to quiet the chamber, we propose the creation of a new institution, the Order of the Distant Fire, an organization dedicated to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. It will be led by humans as they have proven their dedication to this principle, and will include volunteers from any species willing to place honor above profit. She looked directly at Marcus. We would be honored if Marcus Kane would serve as the Order's first marshal. Marcus felt every eye in the chamber turn toward him. 3 months ago, he had been a washed-up exile flying a broken-down cargo hauler. Now the dragons wanted him to lead an organization that could reshape galactic civilization. Speaker Astareth, he said, his voice somehow steady despite the magnitude of the moment. I'm honored by your trust, but I have to ask, why me? I'm just a soldier who did what needed doing. Astareth's golden eyes gleamed with something that might have been amusement. Exactly. You acted not for glory or reward, but because it was right. That is precisely why you must lead this order. The galaxy needs more beings who will do what needs doing simply because it needs doing. Seventh Born broke ranks and flew across the chamber to land on Marcus's shoulder, just as she had during the battle. Her scales had darkened to a deep purple shot through with veins of silver, and she was already larger than she had been just weeks ago. Dragons grew fast when they were happy. She says you smell like home, Astareth translated as Seventh Born nuzzled against Marcus's cheek. She says you smell like safety and courage, and the promise that someone will always stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. Marcus reached up to gently stroke the young dragon's scales. Tell her I said she's going to grow up to be magnificent. She understands human speech perfectly well, Astareth replied with obvious pride. All my children do. They are quite intelligent, even for dragons. The council president called for order as the chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives from dozens of species were already requesting meetings with the dragon delegation. Trade negotiators were furiously calculating the potential value of dragon technology. Military advisors were wondering what dragon alliance would mean for galactic defense. But Marcus only had eyes for the 7 young dragons who had changed everything. They were no longer the tiny, helpless creatures he had protected. They were becoming something magnificent and powerful and wise, and somehow, inexplicably, they still looked at him like he was the most important person in the galaxy. You know, he said to Astareth, when I landed on Drakmor Prime, I thought my life was over. I thought I was just a broken-down soldier with nothing left to lose. And now? Astareth asked. Marcus looked around the chamber, at the assembled representatives of hundreds of species, at the dragons who had changed everything, at the future that was opening up before them all. Now I think maybe it was just beginning. The council president called for a formal vote on the dragon proposals, but Marcus already knew how it would end. The galaxy had just witnessed the birth of something new, something that might actually make the universe a better place. The Order of the Distant Fire would become real, and it would do good work among the stars. But first, Marcus had a promise to keep. He had told Astareth that he would see her in the sky, and he intended to do exactly that. The dragons had given him wings, and he was going to use them to protect those who needed protecting. After all, It was what needed doing. Years later, when historians wrote about the moment that changed galactic civilization, they would focus on the dragon technology and the new alliances and the shifting balance of power among the species. But those who were there remembered something else. They remembered a banished human who had chosen to stand with dragons against impossible odds. They remembered tiny dragon children trying to breathe fire to protect their dying mother. They remembered the moment when two very different species discovered they shared the same values. They remembered kindness and how it had literally changed the universe. And in the deep places between stars, where dragons built their cities from crystallized starlight and sang songs that could be heard across dimensions, they told a new story to their children. It was the story of Marcus Kane, the human who had become legend not through conquest or discovery, but through a simple choice to do what was right when it mattered most. Dragons remember kindness. They remember sacrifice. And they never, ever forget their debts. The legend of the banished fighter had only just begun.